Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the big news. The topic for today's discussion: Supreme Court upholds demonetization. Let us try and understand what is this article in greater detail. November 8, 2016, the Prime Minister of the country, Narendra Modi ji, in a televised address held that two banknotes of 500 rupees and 1000 rupees will become worthless piece of paper. Here comes the demonetization. So what is this demonetization? It is the process through which a nation's economic unit of exchange loses its legally enforceable validity. Currencies that are terminated are no more legally considered exchanges and have no financial value. Demonetization is the process of eliminating the lawful acceptance status of a monetary unit. What do we understand by this? We have couple of currency notes in our country: 100 rupees, 200 rupees, 500 rupees, 1000, 2000, so on and so forth. So what we have is one of the currency notes. This currency note loses its legal tender. So you would not be able to issue it in the market. You would not be able to give it to another person as a legal tender. Even if it is given, it will not be accepted as a legal tender. So demonetization is a process where it has the RBI approval, the government approval, and that particular note loses its legal tender and it will no more be present in the market. Why is demonetization introduced by the countries? To control the criminal activities. What is this criminal activity? Counterfeit notes. We have Pakistan. We can also have some other country as well, where they are infusing the counterfeit notes, which are nothing but the fake currencies. In order to ensure that this fake currency is eliminated from the system, every now and then new sets of notes are released. So one objective is to control the criminal activity. Second is to forbid tax avoidance and other financial crimes. Many people do not actually pay the taxes. When it comes to India, the taxes that are paid by the country is far less as well. Many people who are only salaried, they pay the taxes, but rest of the business community, they do not pay the taxes. So in order to make sure that the black money is swept off in one single stroke, what we have is demonetization exercise, which is taken by the country. Third, it also contributes to the paperless financial system. More the cash, more will be the black money. So what should the people do? They should be shifting to the digital payment system. So in order to encourage people to go on digital payment system like phone pay, Paytm, Google Pay, so on and so forth, the government may introduce demonetization as well. So what were the objectives as to why demonetization was introduced in 2016? One is to curb corruption. Second was to prevent counterfeiting. Third was to prevent terrorist activities. And fourth, as we discussed, is to make sure that people shift to the digital mode of payment. But there can also be disadvantages with respect to demonetization. What are these? Expenses issuing new currency and coinage minting can be high. The government of India introduced the demonetization in November 2016. But the government also introduced new currency notes in the form of 2000 and 500 as well. So it has to replace the existing currency. So when this happens, large scale amount of money is also used for the printing of these notes. For example, after the demonetization, as much as more than 7,000 crores was spent by RBI in order to mint the 500 as well as the 2000 rupees notes. So the existing one are replaced with the new ones, which means that the RBI will have to fund a lot of money. The money that it gives as dividends to the government of India is used by RBI to print new notes. This is a problem. Second, illegal activity will not be stopped. Okay, for a temporary period, we are able to stop the counterfeit notes, fake currencies, but we also have reports that even now we have fake currencies in the market. So as and when we keep reinventing, so will be the technology for the fake currency rackets as well. So Pakistan infuses it in multiple states in our country, and at the same time it is also used for terrorist activities as well, and this may also create disturbances among individuals. If you go back to November 8, 2016, there were number of people who also suffered. Number of marriages got cancelled as well. In fact, even to buy basic amenities, people did not have the money, and at the same time, standing in long queues, some of them passed away as well. So these are some of the disadvantages when it comes to demonetization, as it will also have a temporary issue of problems for the people. So when you look at all these issues, issues, what we actually see that the government of India in November 8, 2016 introduced the demonetization. Do we have any earlier experience in India? Yes. The first instance was in the year 1946. The second was in 1978 when an ordinance was promulgated to phase out notes with denomination of 1000, 5000 and rupees 10,000. This was done under High Denomination Banknote Demonetization Act of 1978. So what is the difference between 1978 and 2016? When you look at 1978, the amount of cash that we had in the system was far less in comparison to 2016. In 2016, Indian economy had expanded. So the amount of cash that we had in 2016 was far greater in comparison to 1978. What are the laws through which the government and the RBI would be able to come up with the demonetization? What we have to look at is the Reserve Bank of India Act of 1974. So we have couple of sections in the Reserve Bank of India Act of 1934. One happens to be denomination of assets, that is section 24. The other happens to be legal tender character of notes, which is section 26. What is this section 24? The central government may, on the recommendation of the central board, direct the non-issue or the discontinuance of issue of banknotes of such denominational values as it may specify in this behalf. So 24 of 2 speaks about demonetization. It speaks about taking off certain currencies from the market, and this power is given to the Reserve Bank of India. So the Reserve Bank of India makes a recommendation to the central government, and the central government, by issuing a notification, can immediately demonetize a particular currency. It can be a 100 rupee note, it can be a 500 rupee note, it can be a 1000 rupee note. So this power is given to the RBI, which makes a recommendation, and recommendation, if accepted by the central government, they will immediately issue a notification. Then we also have section 26 of 2, which empowers the central government to declare banknotes as ceasing to be legal tender. On recommendation of the central board, the central government may, by notification in the Gazette of India, declare that with effect from such date as may be specified in the notification, any series of banknotes of any denomination shall cease to be legal tender. So it can be 100, it can be 200, it can be 500. So any legal tender, which means it can be any currency, even 10 rupee note, even a 20 rupee note, 50 rupee note. So it can be any note. So if they so decide, the RBI makes a recommendation, the central government obliges to it, and if so obliged, they will immediately issue a Gazette notification. So it is this that we have to understand with respect to the laws in the country. But something else happened. Then there was a report that was released by the Reserve Bank of India after this entire demonetization took place. What did this RBI report say? According to this report, 99.30% of demonetized money is back in the system, says the RBI report. The Reserve Bank of India, which has taken awfully long time to count the currency that was returned in the limited period window provided by the government to exchange or deposit the demonetized currency, said in its annual report for 2017-18 that the exercise is finally over. Of the 15.41 lakh crore worth rupees 500 and 1000 rupees notes in circulation on November 8, 2016, when the note ban was announced, notes worth 15.31 lakh crore have been returned. So after this report, couple of petitions were filed in the Supreme Court of India. What does this mean? This means that according to the government, it felt with one single stroke of the demonetization, the entire black money can be taken off the system. But what exactly happened? 99.3% of the money is back into the system. So the government was anticipating that it would be about 3 lakh crore, but it was only 10,000 odd crores that had the black money, which basically meant that this entire intention of sweeping out the black money was not met. And at the same time, there were also few petitioners who went on to say that the due procedure that was supposed to have been followed with respect to 26 of 2 of the RBI, that is Reserve Bank of India Act of 1934, is also met as well. So couple of questions came into the picture. They also felt that the objective of the government of India was not met. So they filed number of petitions in the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court of India looked into this particular case, and finally after 6 years, the Supreme Court has said that demonetization is upheld. What were the questions that were asked by the petitioners? The first question is, the most objectives remains unmet. What are the objectives? The objective was to curb circulation of fake currency notes, seize unaccounted wealth of black money, curb activities related to narcotics and terrorism. Are these activities still continuing? Yes. If these activities were the objectives of the government of India to bring an end to, but we still have all these activities that are continuing, added to it, people also faced a lot of issues as well. They had personal trouble as well. So, how can the government be held accountable? So, give us a solution was what was pleaded in front of the Supreme Court of India. This is the first question. The second question was with respect to the RBI Act itself. The Union government has claimed it has the power to demonetize currency under Section 26 of the RBI Act. Now, if we look into Section 26 of 2, what does it say? On the recommendation of the Central Board, which means to say that you have the Reserve Bank of India Central Board, which ideally has to make the recommendation. So, this recommendation should emanate, should start, should progress from the Reserve Bank of India to the central government. So the objective here is that Reserve Bank of India should raise this request to the central government. It is not the central government of India which should come up with this particular suggestion, but instead the Reserve Bank of India should ask the central government. So the second question that was asked before the Supreme Court is with respect to Section 26 of 2, where they went on to say that if it is a recommendation that is emanating, that is starting off from Reserve Bank of India to central government, it is valid enough. But if it is from central government to the Reserve Bank of India, the procedural laws have not been followed. This was the second one. And they also said previously we've also had demonetization in the past as well. They did come up with a law as well in the present situation, that is in 2016. The law was not passed, so this particular procedure was not right, so the government will have to be held accountable, is the second question. What is the third question? Due process not followed. Chidambaram said that according to convention, a move which can have drastic consequences on the country must first be recommended by the RBI Central Board and then be deliberated upon by the Parliament. Since that was done, the government had to be held accountable and the Supreme Court will have to deliver justice and have to give the judgment in favor of the petitioners, said this particular petition and a series of petitions. And now the Supreme Court has upheld the government's decision to demonetize currency notes of 500 and 1000 by a 4:1 majority. So what is this 4:1 majority? 4 judges of the Supreme Court have upheld and have said yes, the government has the right to do so. It has the legitimate right to meet the objectives and it upheld the demonetization process. But the minority judgment, that is one judge, was not in favor of it. Let's discuss what are these aspects given out by the Supreme Court of India. When you look at the questions asked before the Supreme Court of India, the first question was, it was about 26 of 2. Ideally, it should have been Reserve Bank of India which should have raised the request and the central government should have followed it. But when it comes to this particular section, what were the arguments that were made? What did the Supreme Court held? The Supreme Court held that this particular section does not talk about the process of initiation, which means whosoever can do it. It can be the central government which can initiate it. It can be the Reserve Bank of India. It can initiate it. So this particular section, that is section 26 of 2, it does not speak about who has to initiate it. So this basically means that in this case, the central government can initiate it and at the same time, the Reserve Bank of India can also initiate as well. So the section does not talk about the process of initiation. It only says that the process will not end without certain parameters where they were consulted. The board did acknowledge as well and the government did acknowledge the recommendation of the Reserve Bank of India. So it is not about who started it, but did they have the consultation? Yes. If consultation was there, then this particular process is right, said the Supreme Court of India. And when you look at arguments made by the Reserve Bank of India, which happens to be the respondent, what did the respondent say? It went on to say that in the previous instances, yes, the petitioners are saying that law was important, but in those instances, the Reserve Bank of India did not give permission. It did not acknowledge. That is why a law became a necessity. But in the present situation, the Reserve Bank of India and its members and its board, the central board, has acknowledged it. It has given concurrence. So as a result, law may not be necessary, said the respondent side of Reserve Bank of India. In fact, the Reserve Bank of India also pointed out that we had the quorum, we also followed the RBI General Regulations of 1949, we also met up as well, the central board meeting did take place as well, and when consent was taken, that is when the government implemented it. So irrespective of whosoever has initiated this process, ultimately process was followed. So this particular decision is right, said the Supreme Court of India. The second point that the Supreme Court also made was in reference to the proportionality. The government of India came up with the demonetization primarily because it wanted to make sure that black money is not there in the system, and at the same time it wanted to ensure that fake currencies is deleted from the system. Did we have any other alternative? Was there any other alternative which could have caused least interference for the people? If there was an alternative, you could have gone ahead with that, was the petitioner's argument. But in this particular case, the Supreme Court went on to say the executive, that is the government, has the prerogative. They have the documents. They also have required data as well. They are the best judge of the inputs and the circumstances, and they would be able to take the decision as per the data that they have. So whether it has been able to meet the proportionality or not, who will decide it? It is the executive. Why will they decide it? Because they have the data with them. So because they have the data with them, they would ultimately able to take this decision. So the RBI has given them enough concurrence, and RBI plays a material role in economics and monetary policies. It has also given its confirmation as well. So in order to bring an end to black money and fake currencies, the government has the right, because it has the data, it has the executive functionality. So proportionality principle was also upheld by the Supreme Court of India. And finally, the Supreme Court also went on to say the government did come up with a law in the form of specified banknotes cessation of liabilities act of 2017, since they also passed an ordinance and a law was also approved in 2017. Parliament's approval was also taken. So this particular demonetization exercise holds good, said the majority judgment. In a nutshell, it concluded that 26 of 2, government has the power, it has the concurrence of the Reserve Bank of India. Then it spoke about proportionality. It said that government had the data, so it can go ahead with demonetization. And finally, they do have a law as well. And this law was also passed in the parliament in the form of specified banknotes cessation of liabilities act of 2017. Taking all this into picture, it upheld the demonetization exercise was good, and it upheld it by 4:1 majority. What is the minority viewpoint of this particular judgment? Justice B.V. Nagaratna, in her dissenting view, held that although the government's demonetization exercise was well intentioned and thought through, it was unlawful on the legal grounds. How? Justice Nagaratna referred to the record submitted by the Union government and the RBI to conclude that the central bank did not apply its mind independently while recommending the cancellation of 500 and 1000 notes as proposed by the center. On looking at the record submitted by RBI, I find the use of words and phrases as desired by the central government. Government has recommended the withdrawal of legal tender of 500 and 1000 notes. Recommendations have been obtained. This is where independent mind of the Reserve Bank of India was not applied. So they have not followed the due process, says the minority view. According to the minority view, the justice went on to say that the proposal cannot be construed as a recommendation under section 26 of 2 of the RBI Act, said the minority view. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.